She began as a warrior goddess, composite sorceress, but surely enough, this was the original prototype of Teela, one of the masters to be released in 1981. From what I could remember in the early 80s, at least in this version, I remember there was two versions of Teela, one with the snake armor and one with the long hair. Was she a blonde or was she a redhead? It didn't matter. She was always lovely and fair and a great, warrior. She had that snake staff. As time went on, it was clearly defined that the sorceress was the sorceress and Teela was Teela. But what Mattel was trying to do was separate the two and make it that so that you would have two figures in one. So technically, I had the sorceress figure. I'll be honest, I never really liked playing with the girl characters, but that obviously changed since the 90s. So Teela had to have her own identity, and so the sorceress, she became the sorceress of Zor, and Teela was still Teela. There's only been one Teela figure in the entire of each series. It wasn't until this mini comic cleared up the confusion that these two were separate, and that Teela was the daughter of the sorceress. And I guess the perverted thing was that Skeletor wanted a bride, so in the first four comics, he was trying to do this, trying to bang Teela, but he made her out of the... So something, technically, it's his daughter, right? In this original run, it was his daughter, and he still wanted to bang her like fucking Woody Allen. I do not recall much about Filmation, except she was there and she was doing what she had to do. And Linda Gary, what a wonderful lady, but she portrayed the character very well. I mean, I just remember the morals. I mean, she was pretty straightforward. Some versions, like the one in Germany, she had jet black hair. And as early as the Star comics, she would assume her role as the sorceress, taking over. Of course, there was the film version. Kind of reminds me of like Bounty Hunter of the 80s, that sort of techno vibe. I recently watched, because I know the cartoons, the 90s cartoons, but recently I watched the episodes of He-Man, The New Adventures, and Teela returned because He-Man was worried about not being home on Eternia, 1,000 years ago. And Teela would show up, blonde, with purple armor. I don't know if there's an action figure. If there is an action figure based on this exact version of Teela, let me know in the comments. This is her coming to help fight against Skeletor. Now this one I remember very well, this version of Teela. Of course, she was voiced by Lisa Ann Bailey. And what a ravishing... She had like 6-foot long hair. Like, you would be ashamed of yourself if you disappointed her. You cannot disappoint this version of Teela at all. So she showed up in the comics. She looks way better in the comics than she does in the cartoon. Because they could, Emilio Santalucia and other artists could draw her better. What an amazing moment here. She didn't have a lot of development. There was the one time she was turned to a snake woman by the snake men. And she got sick one time and needed the sorceress's help. But I think the Evil Lyn story where Evil Lyn got sick was probably a little bit better. And that's in the comics and not the cartoon. In the 2013 incarnation, Teela went up against King Hiss because King Hiss was going to throw He-Man as a sacrifice to reawaken the Snake Man, I guess, or Serpos. This is the goddess of Serpos. But what I really liked about this part, and I've shown this before, was that Teela was tossed into the damn sun. Here she is. I mean, she was really good. I think Keith Giffen made her too mean in the first story. And there she gets tossed because she was really like Snake. The King Hiss didn't acknowledge her. But this was the moment where she realized that she was lied to. Like, all these years I never knew. I never knew who you were. You were my mother and I never knew. How could you have denied me so? And it is my greatest regret. My role as the sorceress made it impossible for me to be a mother to you. But I have always watched over you. I have seen you grow to become a fierce defender of the world, and now it is time to become even more. As the goddess Serpos, she could fight Evil Lyn's Horokoth and watch over He-Man during the last important battle, which was the Snake Man. She could rally the snake troops to defend He-Man and the Masters in the time against Hordak. And at some point during the battle, Serpos was dying. And through magic items that he has acquired through the sorceress, Man-at-Arms willingly gave his life for Teela so that she could come back. Not as the goddess, but as herself. At the end of this Eternity War, things went back to normal. You have a floating castle there. Teela became the head teacher and taught everyone about the history of Eternia. And also she became Adam's beloved wife. And also a good friend to She-Ra, her invisible friend when she was a child. And this in this multiverse where there were crossovers between multiple He-Man, he says, "I know He." She says, "I know He-Man. I know now He-Man is. I know why Adam was always late. Why he seems so irresponsible. It's because he was you. Because Adam was so busy being a hero. I always wanted to tell you, but I always wanted you to know I love you." And this was the Teela from 2002 or 2000X, and this is like mobile game He-Man. In the latest version, we have to, well, we're going to forget the Revelation Teela because Teela and Andra were quasi gay couple, but in the 2021 cartoon, here she's a little different. Um, she doesn't have a father of Duncan. Duncan's not her father. So there's a new approach, and there's these different versions, but eventually they came up with this weird floating headphones Teela. And this Teela, I love, look at these designs, by the way. They came up with all kinds of weird designs. And then here she is as the sorceress when He-Man gets the sword and everybody shares the power. And these are the different versions of her as sorceress. So it's an ethnic Teela, but I think it really works. So coming a long way from the gold and blonde hair or reddish hair, strawberry blonde, to this, I'd say it was a very good history for Teela. I wish she could do more. I didn't like her outrage at Duncan and King Randor in the Revelation cartoon. And I hope there's more for her, more in store. And that has been this history of Teela.